Hello, hello. I'm happy to be here. I'm having storage issues on my computer, so that was a bit of a roundabout process to get this started. I am here to talk about the Capricorn, the second, in fact, Capricorn full moon of this year. It's not that common that we have two full moons in the same archetypal sign in a row. Usually we'd have one Capricorn full moon and one Capricorn new moon each year. So this is quite a big deal in that it also means that in order for that to work out, we have to have a new moon in the first degree and the last degree of the sign. So it really like holds that archetypal energy because the first and last degrees of the sign are very, very potent parts. The 0 degree point is like the seed point of that archetype. So the infancy, the potentiality of that archetype in the beginning of that sign, and as we end that sign with that degree where we have really eked out the energy and the essence of that sign, we've developed through it, and so at that point we have developed in some ways mastery of that sign, but in its shadow and its light traits. So it's that sign in its, I guess you could say, most grandiose way. Full moons are also where we address things that are now kind of also more grandiose, bigger, more visible, more reflective. And the reason that we have the word lunatic and lunacy all comes from the full moon. So we kind of know full moons are times where we are most heightened emotionally. The moon is about our emotional self, and a full moon is always, as you can see here, sun opposite moon in the sky. Basically, the moon doesn't have her own light. She is constantly reflecting the light of the sun. And when she's at her opposite point from him, she can reflect the fullness of his light. When she's with him, it's new moon. We don't see the light in the moon. We don't see the moon because she can't reflect him when she's so close to him. Any of the planets that get close to the sun become invisible for a period of time. At the quarter moon points, first and last quarter moon, she can reflect half of his light. That's when she's at a right angle, 90 degrees to the sun. So when we're at a full moon, we are in this intense polarizing dynamic. They're always in opposite signs, and these opposing sort of archetypal energies are a real push-pull. So we sometimes look at the sun is in Cancer for this full moon, and the moon is in Capricorn. So we would sometimes look at Cancer as being the overarching maternal archetype, and then Capricorn as being the more paternal archetype. So in a sense, the matriarchy and patriarchy, or your mother and father parts internally, or your actual mother and father, or people in your life who have represented motherly or fatherly energies to you. And of course, at the moment, the sun is in the sign of Cancer. So the light is being shone in that area, but the moon is reflecting that from the position of Capricorn. Now, just remember, I've drawn up this chart for where I live. So it wouldn't be for everybody that you would see this happening in the 4th and 10th house on that axis so strongly as it is here. That would be pertinent for you if you live where I am. But for most people, don't worry so much about where you see it. Rather take it into your own chart. Do you have anything in the last degrees of the cardinal signs? The cardinal signs being Cancer, that's the symbol for Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and Aries, okay? So you want to look if you have anything in those last degrees, because that's all going to be impacted. If you have something in the last degrees of Cancer, it's going to be with the sun and opposing the moon. If you have something in the last degrees of Libra, it's going to be squaring both sun and moon, or same for Aries. And I just want to point out here, because this feels like a really, really important piece to me. As I say, we don't tend to have a double lunation in the way that we're having it now. And last year, there were no double full moons, but we had a double new moon, which is also uncommon. And that double new moon happened in a cardinal sign of Aries. So we had the first one at the very beginning of Aries, and the second one was actually an eclipse in the last degree. And that's the one I want to talk about now. And that was, hang on, I'll just double check. I don't know if it'll let you see the screen I'm shifting to. It was on the 20th of April last year at 29 degrees and 52 minutes of Aries. That was an eclipse, okay? It was the second Aries new moon in a row, and it was an eclipse in Aries. And what's really powerful about that is because it was at the last degree, it is now a sensitive point that was activated then that is squaring both Sun and Moon and Pluto, which we're going to talk about in a minute, in this chart, okay? Oops, sorry, this would be with the last. No, this is the right last degree of Aries. So this, what you were seeding in April last year, March, April, because we could look at both of those two Aries new moons. What were you beginning? What were you initiating? Where was the fierce independence coming through, or the warrior in you, where you suddenly had this like absolute ignition within you to step into something, to be bold, to be daring, something along those lines within the archetype of Aries, March, April last year. Particularly the April one is squaring this point. And that was in the final degree of the sign of Aries. And Aries is the baby of the zodiac. It's cardinal fire. It's initiatory. Now, we are now looking at the next cardinal water with Cancer, and cardinal earth with Capricorn, and we're again in the final degrees of the sign. So now we're saying, where are my parent parts maturing to the point where I need to look at those parts of myself realistically? Let's take, for example, the archetype of mother. Where am I being a good mother versus where am I being a smother mother? Just one tiny example. With the archetype of Capricorn, we can say, where am I helping to build healthy structures versus where am I being a little bit too constrictive? So, you know, you could start to look at your thing, and you could say that with a father archetype, for example, saying the good father creates stability and structure, but when it becomes overly structured and he doesn't allow the child to make mistakes, that becomes problematic as well. So now when I say the parent parts, I'm saying turn it into yourself, because you have an inner child inside of you, you have an inner teenager, if you've gone through that part of your life, and you also have inner parent parts. So an inner mother and an inner father who need to nurture the inner child. And the more we do this work on ourselves, the more that we can take it out into the world and express that in a way that becomes more whole and healed as an individual out in the world. Okay, so this is the last that Aries 29-degree Aries one that I'm talking about last year was very much something in its infancy, and here we are looking at the bigger picture. How have we been nurturing that thing that we began then, and how far have we come? Think about the Capricorn moon. What have I built from that thing that I started, that thing that I initiated? How far have I built it and nurtured it and nourished it? And how do I keep taking it forward? Or is it time for me to step away? So those are I don't know if that will, I think we each have to take it in our own life. Okay, then I just want to point out that 29 degrees of Capricorn in itself is a hot point, is a hot spot, because as many of us know who've been following astrology for the last few years, Pluto over here he's now at 0 and 53 minutes of Aquarius, but he's heading back to the 29-degree point of Capricorn, and he has been dancing on that liminal space of Capricorn Aquarius for the last few years. He was teasing his way closer to Aquarius without even entering, and then finally entering, but then jumping back, and then entering Aquarius this year, and he'll just dip his toe back into Capricorn, that 29th degree of Capricorn. So that point that is being highlighted by the moon now, and she highlights and reflects, and very much on a nutritive and emotionally nourishing level, or emotionally, sometimes she shows us what is not emotionally nutritive, so that we can redress the balance. So she's highlighting that part, but also Pluto is already retrograde heading back there. And even though they are not in the same sign, you can see it says Moon 29 Capricorn, Pluto 0 Aquarius, and those are the minutes that it is, arc minutes. They're still within like a degree, just over a degree orb from one another. So they are actually in a conjunction. It's called an out of sign conjunction. So when we put the moon and Pluto together, we are likely to be dealing with some emotional transformation. And it's going to impact, because it's opposite the sun, our soul, our purpose in this world. So this is going to be quite intense. That is a collective energy. If it touches your chart more specifically, that's also going to ring louder. Okay, now there's two other things that I really want to get into. We have just, maybe more than two, we have just come past this big Aries Uranus conjunction, which would have been at the end of last week, beginning of the week of this new moon, which happened, this full moon, which happens on a Sunday. Sorry, I don't think I said the date, is the 21st of July. So the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of the week leading up to this, we had this Uranus-Mars conjunction, which is quite a dangerous, intense, accident-prone, initiatory kind of an energy, right? Because Mars gets things done, and how do I get things done? And Uranus is shocks and shifts. The two of them coming together is like just walk slowly, drive carefully, be mindful kind of energy. But that was happening at the 26th degree of Taurus, fixed earth sign. So kind of like our stubborn bits getting a real kickstart. If you didn't want to let go of that thing and you've been meaning and you were meant to let go of it, maybe it came as a shock. Maybe it's still aftershocks for you in your life at the point of this full moon. But at the point of this full moon, Mars has just moved out of the sign of Taurus and into Gemini. So he is at a seed point of Gemini. Now, Gemini is also quite intense this year because Jupiter is transiting. Here he is at 12 degrees at the minute. Jupiter is transiting through Gemini. Jupiter only goes through a sign every 12 years, and he spends about a year in the sign. So when Jupiter, the biggest, most gregarious, loud, benevolent, excessive planet arrives in a sign, he really makes that archetype bigger and bolder and luckier and just sometimes a bit more intense, right? So as Jupiter is transiting in Gemini, and we just had plenty of planets moving through Gemini in the last recent while, through Gemini season, we now have Mars coming into Gemini, and he's at that inception point of Gemini at the time of this moon, which is also going to, you can see that he is connecting, hang on a second, and he's still in, sorry, I just want to mention, he's still in a bit of a wide out of sign conjunction to Jupiter, but the intensity of that is beginning to wane a little bit. But he's a pretty intense guy at the best of times. He's kind of still got those aftershocks happening from Uranus. He's now going to be a little bit in two minds, which means that we might sort of spurt forward in one direction and then decide maybe we should have gone the other direction and spurt forward in the other direction. But he is now heading to a conjunction with Jupiter. So he's finished his conjunction with Uranus and he's heading to a conjunction with Jupiter, which will only happen around mid-August. So we're just looking at this chart and seeing, okay, he's going to come here to meet Jupiter, and then after he travels faster, so after he goes past Jupiter, he's going to form a square. Oh, wait, I've lost my little mouse. Oh my goodness, there it is. He's going to form a square to Saturn at 19 degrees. Well, then by then I think it's at 17 degrees because he's moving backwards. Anyway, in the mid degrees of Pisces. And then so is Jupiter. So Saturn is the ruler of this chart. He's the ruler of the moon in this chart. And he is in charge of this lunation. So because he rules Capricorn. So he is kind of making everything, and traditionally also Aquarius. So he traditionally rules both of these two planets. So he's making everything deeply reflective. And because he's in a water sign, extra reflective, extra emotionally based. So we need to be mindful and disciplined with our emotions at this full moon. That's part of our lesson. Transformation is tough, but we can't allow our emotions to rule the show. We can't make decisions from the emotional point. We need to learn some emotional maturity, maybe you could say. So that's also quite an important thing, and it's going to continue to trigger that kind of energy that we find in this moon when those guys come around and square Saturn, because that's going to put us under a little more pressure with those Saturn lessons. Then you see we have Neptune here at 29 degrees of the sign. He's also retrograde now. He got to the last arc minutes of Pisces. He's been traveling through Pisces for many years now. He's getting to the end of his journey here, but it'll be the same kind of process as Pluto's. He's going to back and forth. It takes a little while to fully leave a sign. And in fact, we're having this very, very potent thing where we've had a few years of Pluto's leaving, we're leaning into a few years of Neptune's leaving, and then also having Uranus, the fastest of the three, will be also leaving into Gemini. So for the three outer planets to all be moving signs sort of simultaneously is quite unusual and quite profound. So this is one of our indicators, one of our many indicators for the big changes that we're having in the world and societally. So because this is also 29 degrees and of a water sign, it forms a trine, which is a generous relationship to the sun, and a sextile, which is also supportive to Moon Pluto. So Neptune is very much about the imaginal realm, our ideals, creating the new dream. And because there's a responsibility here in these signs, you know, we can hope that there is this really good nurturing to the reality of a new dream. We don't want it to become delusional or illusional, where we go too far in a direction of something that's not achievable. So I feel like this is a very good promise of dream big, think big, expand, grow, build, but also what is sustainable, what is realistic, what is doable as we stand in the now moment. So that's also very, very important. And we also have the Mars forming a sextile to Neptune, which adds to that, saying, well, how do I do that? Because Mars wants to do it. So how do I get that done? And that's obviously something that's very important to us. And then you can see that he is forming a trine. Mars is forming a trine to Pluto. And again, trines are supportive. So where Pluto's saying we need to transform emotionally, Mars is saying, how can I help you with that? Give me some, Gemini, ideas. Let's get creative. Let's do it. Even if I have to do it more than once, because often in Gemini we do. The Geminis are twins. So maybe I get a little over enthusiastic and I start in a direction, and then Pluto says, whoa, buddy, let's try this instead. Sorry, I know the sun's seeping in here, but it's moving as I'm recording, so I can't do very much with it. We also have Venus traveling through Leo, moving in the direction of Mercury, who is in his shadow and going to do a retrograde. So he's going to get into Virgo. Sorry, my brain went there for a second. Get into Virgo, which is all about details. And then he's going to go back into Leo, which is all about self-autonomy and sovereignty. And then he's going to go back forward through those spaces again. So whatever's showing up for us around this lunation, in the way that we think, the way that we speak, the words that we use too frequently, also look at where you're starting to feel like, oh, I wish I hadn't said that, or why do I keep telling people this, or why don't I tell people this? That kind of thing, where it's starting to feel like that's annoying. Then when the actual retrograde happens, that's going to kick it up a bit. So the same themes as you're experiencing now will start to get even louder and more intense. And then it's going to be a case of, these are the issues that this retrograde is reflecting back to me. And then when Mercury goes forward again, that's when the solutions begin to happen. And remember that Mercury is the ruler of both Virgo, where it will begin and end its retrograde process, will end its final shadow, should I say, and Gemini, which we've just spoken about, Mars and Jupiter and all that Gemini energy being expanded. So Mercury's pretty, maybe you want to say with Jupiter in his sign, in some ways Mercury's been given a gift at this stage, but also Mercury likes things to be lots of little details, small, concise curiosities, every color in the crayon box. And Jupiter's just like sometimes a bit bigger than Mercury would like, because Jupiter's like big picture. Like, I don't care about the details. Let's just have fun for now and focus on, enjoying, expanding, growing. And Mercury's like, but if you keep doing that and you don't nourish the soil, then the next crop won't work. And if you don't fix the fences, the animals are going to come through and eat them. So he's quite a solutions oriented guy, where Jupiter's just like in the beliefs, trust and believe. And there's something beautiful in both of those, but you can see sometimes Mercury feels a little bit overwhelmed by Jupiter's grandiosity. So that is something to just recognize, that the whole time that Jupiter is going to be in Gemini, he's giving a little extra luck and boosting the ideas and creativity and potentials, but also he's maybe giving Mercury a bit of a speed wobble, and Mercury can go fast. So when he's going fast and he has a wobble, that can be a bit disorienting. So I think I'm going to stop at that for now, just because I could keep going, but at some point I have to stop, otherwise it gets too long. Oh, sunshine. Okay, we're going to just sign off. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe. And I look forward to being back with you for the next forecast. Thank you for your time.